Destroyed all the papers and blew up the Challenger crew. Except for the twinsies. Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
Look out into deep space away from the sun, it's the darkest light you can imagine.
Hey, space boy, you broke my rocket man heart. Where are the stars? Is it bright or is it dark? The vacuum of space, oh, the tomfoolery.
What happens if you get a leak on that? You have a leak. Deep over my bubble. It's hard to comprehend.
Space is fake AF.
Two little bitty O-rings.
Space is fake AF.
It's not what you think, homeboy.
Space is fake AF.
It's all just start doing that.
Space is fake AF.
Research Eddie Bravo.
Alright, that is Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworm. Space is fake AF. And I saw he was on the website for Flattoberfest, which makes me want to go. And I think I will. It's going to be in Vegas, but I'll let you know. We'll have to arrange some kind of a meetup around it, but I think it's important to support the artists who have supported us and who are a part of what we do. The Bards of the Info War. We have Ollie Goering, Not Shocked, Osher, Demetria 101, A. Garcia, Thirst for Truth, Frank Murr, and others piling in. Excellent. Again, I just blasted out notifications, and we're going to do the texts again very soon here. Budgetary constraints, but not a big deal. We're meeting all of our goals. I was planning on this video production being completed at the end of August because there are certain things that I needed done, that we need done, and now they are done because we have a documentary crew that came through here on the 4th, and it couldn't have been more perfectly timed, because had it been during any other day of the week, we would have been unable to have actually recorded. The office would have been full, but I was the only one here. They might have been left with the impression that the whole building's mine. Anyway, I'm handing out wrenches if you're in chat. Roxy W, wrench, Not Shocked, wrench. A. Garcia, wrench. Welcome to the Wrench Club. The cinematographer was in the office by himself for a few moments, and he came out after recording B-roll and said, lots of penguins in there, which would be a reference to the work of Chris Pontius, Happy the Artist, X-Pac, the Penguin Party shirts on display, and all of the various penguin-themed mugs and items that people have sent, and I'm sure they got all of it. But the important thing here is they were asking for an explanation to help them understand what we mean when we say we don't believe that we live on a CGI ball. And normally we're just talking among others who have already arrived at the same conclusion of shape agnosticism, embracing the fact that we don't know, not as some kind of a flaw. I mean, it's really to say I don't know, it's okay. I don't have all the answers. You don't have to. But that doesn't mean you have to default and trust the establishment answers they have given you just to fill in what you don't know. This is healthy skepticism. Skepticism is really just about suspending judgment, and I would say it's especially healthy today when you're meant to make decisions off of sound bites, off of out of context clips. There's no context. Everything's been adrift in this sea of irrelevance, And what we pro-offer here is the raft. And we call it a think tank, but in many ways it's analogous to the concept of the raft of penguins, which goes back to the meaning of the mascot. When penguins aggregate on water, they pile up like all that used PPE and COVID waste forming islands out in the ocean. They just pile up, but it allows them to stay afloat. And what we do is we maintain a cohesive picture of what's going on. We don't have the goldfish memory that most do, and we're able to connect dots. And it's not conspiracy theory. What we're observing is a conspiracy in progress, and we're just describing it. And it is a conspiracy. If we are not on their CGI ball, it's a deliberate deception. You just can't efface that. I remember when the Flat Earth Conference organizer was being interviewed on the news, they said, "Is this a conspiracy?" And he said, "No, it's just scientists don't want people to realize there's a creator. So a few scientists just don't want us to know they were wrong." I mean, that was his explanation. It doesn't make any sense. And I think what we proffer here is something a little more sensible, that it really has little to do with the quote shape. It's about worldview and how it's filtered, and whether or not you accept it and why you wouldn't. And of course, that was the main point, is that you cannot really separate a worldview from media. And I also made the point that we're in an age of visual illiteracy. It's very dystopian in the sense that there are people who are routinely fooled by images because they wrongfully assume that what is on the screen is evidence, that the screen is another sensory apparatus. I mean, you have your mind to discern what your senses bring you, but now, yeah, the screen actually is the final arbiter of truth. All right, more have joined. Yes, A. Garcia says, "How was the interview at the Peak?" Now, we didn't go to the Peak because it would require a 3-week warning notice, some kind of a permit, but we went somewhere else. We went to the John Roberts Flood Control Dam, which has this tunnel beneath it that goes near this park in the university, but it's actually the first and only place where I've ever, maybe I shouldn't say. I was going to mention something about DMT in the drainage ditch there. But anyway, the location was of special significance to the Breaking Bad series as well. That's the point where I guess it's Walter White gets dropped off before he fakes his death and disappears from the world. But the interesting place is, I mean, the interesting thing about the place is simply that you can see the horizon 360 degrees, with the exception of like a 5G tower. And what I had to demonstrate was simply that the notion of the Earth being curved isn't something that you can see with your human eyes. You're just too small, and that it's just a misconception. And if you don't have that, if you don't have that direct visual confirmation of a curve, then what is your basis? Well, your basis is, and it must admittedly be, the screen. And if you can't admit that, you're you're being dishonest with yourself. You have to admit, I only experience it as flat and stationary, but I believe it's a ball because of what I'm shown on the screen. And that's all I'm saying, that you agree to what's on the screen. And once you do, you own all kinds of stuff. Like, I believe in this. Okay, well, now you own all of this bad evidence that supports the notion we landed on the moon, that supports all the space shuttle footage. A lot of it looks like animation. A lot of the space shuttle stuff looked like stop motion animation with models. Pre-CGI models. They were using synthetic models. But if you believe it, you have to accept all that bad evidence. And you have to argue in defense of it. And a lot of it is just not defensible. And most people aren't ready to defend it. We've confronted this before many times. We've confronted these individuals in various debates who will talk about your evidence that you can see too far, your evidence that the Earth is not moving based on your understanding of the motion of the stars and the sun, etc., compared to theirs. But they never let you take the debate to the space station, to the special effects. They won't even admit that into the conversation, into the debate. And what does that tell you? They're not equipped. Let's see here. 6079 says, I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we destroyed the technology. Don Petit. Yeah, I kind of thought maybe they should just segment like a small group of people, like just give them 1969 technology and that budget, and then put them off on their own little island and let them go to the moon. Because apparently NASA can't do it anymore. But the real reason they can't, and the real reason they won't, is simply that they do not want the poor special effects to be called out. Do you really think they can get astronauts to jump around on the moon convincingly right now today? Not compared to the special effects in the video games and in the movies. Jake the A-Hole's here. How was your meetup with the documentary people? Well, we had a few places. We had this, it wasn't just an interview. It was more like a series of interviews or conversations, but they weren't really debating, but they were kind of trying to get a understanding of where I'm coming from. I think I gave them answers that didn't revolve around the Bible, that didn't neglect to include the role of media and the mediation of the minds, and the fact that there is a de facto religion that has been superimposed over the masses, which I define to them as scientism, which is essentially science infused with so much ideology that it ceases to be falsifiable, and its doctrines turn into dogma. I also described how conspiracy theorists, quote unquote, is more of a pejorative because most of what the mainstream promulgates is conspiracy theory, and what we do specifically here is we even target conspiracy theories for debunking. And, case in point, 5G towers. I was describing to them the ludicrousness of the 5G phobics and how they believe the sky is going to be ignited at some point, and how that's just a fear-based, superstitious conclusion, which is not something that we would ever arrive at. If your conclusion is reached by fear, it means that your thinking stopped. Your emotions led you somewhere. And that's fine. A lot of brainwashed people or people who are in this false paradigm are people who have been hooked emotionally. Because the mass media is an emotional manipulator. It's actually a narcissist if you wanted to psychopathologize it. Elephant Tusk says, should be interesting to see how they edit the footage. Right. Well, what can they actually do with it? Because my point of it is, they are telling a story, so it goes in a sequence. So the host of the show, or program, or documentary, and I'll get some more information about where they're from. It's some Swedish documentary team. But the idea was they meet me, we go make a observation of the horizon and talk about things. Then we went down to this giant owl. It looks like the Bohemian Grove. It's a cafe. And then we came back to the office and they recorded the live stream so they could see how the think tank works. And I explained the Infinite Plane Society's censorship, which I made a point to mention that because we had lost 3 of our YouTube channels the night before. That can't be a coincidence. But they had a lot of questions, and I answered all of their questions. I didn't present any kind of religious arguments at all. In fact, he asked me if I was religious, and I said no. If anything, I'm agnostic and philosophical, and that this is something that's outside the purview of religion. Javo82 says, I noticed in the interview how he asked 2 or 3 questions. So do you believe in this? Well, he asked, do you believe? And I was making the point that there's a difference between believing and withholding agreement while rejecting the official explanation. Like in other words, just because I don't believe this doesn't mean that I therefore believe this alternative model. We don't have a model. That was kind of my point. The best thing approaching a quote model or a cosmography that I have right now is just the understanding of worldview, because you can't see or feel shape. That's not even a consideration. But they were repeatedly asking the questions about these different topics, and that was another point I had to make, that there is a distinction that people don't make, which has to do with whether something that you claim is something you know to be true or something you merely believe. Are you bearing false witness? Are you falsely claiming knowledge? Faulty eyewitness testimony is a thing, and it's a phenomenon that you actually observe every single day when people claim they have knowledge of something, when in fact they don't. And it's crucial to make these distinctions because the masses have been rendered into believers, and the people who promulgate the deceptions know the truth. So you have knowers and believers. And you can find many examples throughout history of the vulgar, the masses being left illiterate on purpose. Well, today everybody can read, more or less. However, the visual illiteracy is gone by design. I mentioned how NASA used to use props and models and stop motion animation before they went to CGI. They went from Douglas Trumbull special effects, like, from Space Odyssey 2001, to what we see today, the CGI garbage. And they did this on purpose. They started to, I believe, blend fiction and reality as they do with psyops all the time, but in this case, visually. Now they're inserting visual lies into the regular discourse, into the regular news. So you're watching the news, it's about reality, and now you see this cartoon, but everybody thinks it's real. Now everybody believes in this. And it's been building up and building up to where most of your worldview, if you're a true believer, is cartoon. You live in a Disney universe. And I can point to numerous examples of Disney branding all over the things that you believe, whether it be the moon of Saturn looking like the Death Star, the face of Mickey on Mercury, the face of Pluto on Pluto, both of whom emerged in 1930. We can look at the Game of Thrones logo on Mars, probably just a few miles, I don't know how far it is, from the Star Trek logo on Mars. We can find tie-ins to Disney's Frozen, the character Olaf, as this distant object they call Ultima Thule at the farthest north of the universe, and it references the northern king that Olaf references in Frozen. I mean, there are just so many instances here, and that's what I was pointing out. And I managed to make the point several times that the modern global warming is in fact a reiteration of the angry God of the Old Testament. That it's the same mind control program, and it's an example of not just appropriating the symbolism of the Old Testament, but appropriating a psyop that provides an argument from authority. And he asked me, do you believe in climate change? And it's like, it's not that I don't believe in it, but I'm looking at its utility in governing the world and regulating everybody in it. And that's a key point, because if you believe in it, you're not thinking scientifically. You should know. Science isn't a belief system, which is something else I reiterated. It's not a belief system. It's a methodology, but it's been turned into one, to where people think science is believing the people who are called scientists, which is like an inversion of what it actually would be. And he also asked if I thought he was brainwashed, and I really made the point that no, we're in this echo chamber where there are no alternatives, and brainwashing suggests that you were free thinking and someone came and coerced you into thinking something else. But in the big picture, it's really not something that you're in the position to falsify or debunk. But I think that it's been something that there's no alternative ever presented. It's just like, I don't know if you would call that brainwashing, but it's sort of like in the Matrix. They say you're born in bondage. Okay, let's go ahead and check up on the comment section. And by the way, I think they were going to go interview some other people on this topic, but after they spent the day here, they suggested that they wouldn't need to be at any other location regarding this specific topic. And hit piece or not, it doesn't matter. The whole purpose of it was we need the IPS headquarters to be in the meatverse. It needs to exist so it can't be canceled. And all of what we produce, which is why I made it a point to put a lot of the merch, the design, and everything else kind of in the foreground here in the office so that they wouldn't miss a thing. Because what we're doing here is really, I think we're probably the only truly objective news media organization out there, fully apprised of the hoaxery. And as we move into this 2024 election season, you're going to see so many people lining up behind the various guardrails, and it's just insane to me. The media ecosystem right now is obviously just run by shills, and they've kept us out of this discussion entirely. I mean, that's why they WTC 7'd three of our YouTube channels the night before. As far as when the documentary will be finished, I don't actually know anything about it other than the names of the producer, the company, and the place where they came from. But I expect I'll get more information very soon. I've been really super busy. Woo's News is going to be joining us, if not tomorrow, the following day for sure. I sent out part 2 of his documentary on the newsletter. I also have another podcast I'll be joining on this week as well. But here's the nice thing, is that I was already working on a video where I realized that the way that we convey this isn't direct. You can't just tell somebody um, everything is, which is not what I'm trying to do anyway, but I'm trying to explain something here. This way of deconstructing media from an off-world stage perspective, and what's the starting point for such a conversation? When you're not talking to someone who's already kind of Psy-war aware. Most people don't have that level of situational awareness. So what I've decided is I need to do interviews where somebody who knows nothing about it tries to learn by asking me questions, which I can explain right out of the textbook. So I had been preparing for this, and then at the end of August I was just going to use the Autohoaxology 101 books and make this happen. And they arrive, coincidentally, at the exact same time that my books arrive, and I was looking for ways to basically pay for these cinematographers and reporters. So I was trying to figure out the budget end of things when, they came in, and it's like, well, they're doing it for free, so I'll do it. Not to mention that they will be doing all of the marketing. Like, it's going to expose the IPS to millions. And that's before it hits the US. And I think one of the reasons why we even were featured in this is that the media there didn't seem to have any kind of the bias against these topics that we have here. I mean, the American media has been pretty much uniformly closed-minded. I would even say bigoted to an extent when it comes to this. And I have said too, I believe I did say that the mass media is the de facto world state church. But the locations that we went to happened to be Breaking Bad locations. But as far as the reason I'm bringing this up is that they seem to be wanting to put a lot of effort into the aesthetics. They had a crew there. I was wired with the microphone, and they were taking multiple shots. They had drone shots. So it seems like they had a pretty good working budget, and the people were very professional. But I don't know much other than that. What is the agenda? I would have to guess it's more of a kind of a investigative journalism into the fringe, but I think they came out here because they were particularly fascinated by this think tank, that there's a community. And not only that, but a community can support a media operation that gives them a platform. And while we were here, they were recording a live stream so I could demonstrate how there's hundreds of people aggregating facts that I don't have time to research, putting it in front of me so I could talk about it in front of others. And so the think tank was something I was able to describe, and that was also very important. Joined by Tommy Jones. Thank you for joining. Peace Circle 360s on Twitch. I saw a few others roll up in here. Multi-Zero Dagger, G33, Brojetta, Just a Cup, Wee Polecat, the HBIC, another from Twitch. Lord Dorkington says good evening all, and Lord Laney. Auto Hoax O'Clock. All right, so let's see the next step then. Now that that's done, and this was an important thing, I really believe that once we reach critical mass, and that's the whole symbol of the Kraken, that's why we have IPS.monster. It's like once we reach this critical mass, it will be very easy to reconstitute large numbers of people in our live streams, which will accelerate our investigation. But also, we are moving into the publication side of things where the IPS Insider is going to go into publication later this month. And that will be distributed in a freemium format, which I explained to people in the servers, which means we have an abbreviated, smaller version that's cost effective to distribute through press pass carriers. That's where it's going to begin. Tommy Jones says, thank you for your content. I like to be here when I can. Yeah, and if you can't make it live, if you go to infiniteplane.live, you can find all the various podcasting platforms where you'll find the archives. But as far as this documentary thing, even if it is a hit piece, even if they're just stricken with incredulity and an attempt to make me look crazy, um, like that's not a bad thing. It's really not, because you have people who are going to always see it with their own frame of reference, but the people who know, the 12,000 people that were subscribed at one point, will more likely see that we're still around. Because I think a lot of people, and I see this all the time, people will hit me up and they'll say, I haven't caught you for about 6 months. I thought you were dead. I haven't heard you in a couple of years. I thought you were done. It's like, no, we really haven't missed a day. All right, Copacetic is rolled in, and Pippi Langstruff, thank you for joining. So let's go ahead and go through some of the news of the day. Okay, here's a coincidence. I was thinking about this. Do you remember how Burning Man, after 33 consecutive ceremonies from 1986 to 2019, was canceled for 2020? They canceled Burning Man because of the COVID. Well, during that same time period, during the same day, the anniversary of Burning Man, Ye did the Donde Festival, this Donde release party, during which he set himself on fire. So Ye was a Burning Man in 2020 when it was canceled. Just kind of an interesting thing here to note, because the last time we saw him doing a public modeling thing, it was in Paris, that Balenciaga Muddy Fashion Show. So again, Ye was a Burning Man 2020. He was at the Muddy Fashion Show. And then the Burning Man this year was a bunch of people in the mud. Don't know if there's any connection there, but it's interesting nonetheless. But I guess the main thing today is the fact that both God and Gaia hate the rich. Burning Man flood that trapped 73,000 in mud bath was, quote, God's judgment, Senator Mike Lee of Utah said. And Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia say that God is behind the heavy downpour that blighted the Burning Man festival and trapped thousands. So what you'll see here is both the left and the right are victim blaming the Burning Man, the burners. The burners are at fault here. The right is like, yeah, you deserve it because you made God mad, because you burnt a statue or you burnt a thing. And the other side is like, yeah, you deserve this. You made Gaia mad because of your carbon footprints and your RVs and your unsustainable fantasy of this city you can set up every year without any repercussions. You deserve this. That's all I'm saying. And then others are saying they deserve it because they're rich. So it seems like God and Gaia and the non-rich all hate the rich. So much of it is what you would call Schadenfreude, taking pleasure in the suffering of others. That's certainly a thing here. In fact, there was a piece on Substack, escaping the online discourse to Burning Man, then escaping Burning Man. This is by Lee Fang. Lee Fang did a really good piece on the infiltration of Discord by bad actors put there by feds to make every server look like a hotbed of Nazism. But what he wrote here was, in short, Burning Man is a community where intense personal connectedness is palpable. Like, he's a burner, but he says the connectedness is palpable in ways that are rarely imaginable in the United States. It's especially stark in contrast with the online media universe, in which people remain huddled on screens, immersed in toxic political polarization, accustomed to existing in balkanized boxes, where we are primed to hate each other for no good reason. That's perfect. Toxic political polarization, balkanized boxes, left and right, are so perfectly bifurcated that it's predictable every single time a new story comes out. Oh, it's another shooting. Left is going to blame guns, right's going to blame antidepressants, and they're each going to blame each other. It's consistent. Another point, Lean Dion says, from Astro World to Burning Man, 666 days. Absolutely. Jake the A-hole says, meanwhile, if you watch videos of people who are there, they just danced in the mud. Yeah, isn't that what they go there for anyway? Just to go play in the mud? I mean, I don't think anybody had a bad time. I think that was mostly conjecture and wishful thinking. And it says a lot about the people who were kind of like hopeful. Yeah, they got boils and Ebola, and FEMA's locking them in. This is where disease X is going to be ground zeroed. They're all dead. Like, it was just like hopium or doom hopium. A lot of people are like that. Now, this is notable because let's say we do have some kind of mass communist uprising where the poor decide to eat the rich. There's not going to be any sympathy, and people are going to watch on TV when this, not when, but if society were to cannibalize itself. I don't think any sane minds are going to prevail. You can just see what's in people's hearts by the way they just pour it out on Twitter, which was a point he was making. Okay, here's another audio clip by Sam Harris, who was one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse of atheists back when they were debating this publicly. It was Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and I think there's another one, but these atheists who are all believers in CGI balls. So they may not believe in God or religion, but they believe in balls in space that look fake to anybody who can see straight, or think straight rather, because you can see it and it looks real, or it can look real. But that's not always evidence that it is real. Look at this. This is Sam Harris describing, though, the behaviors incentivized on Twitter. And I think he makes a strong point. The reason he left Twitter, he's suggesting that the more or less the culture at Twitter encourages and incentivizes psychopathy. And I'm saying he's right because the mass media is a narcissist. It exhibits all of the psychopathic behaviors that you would attach to that personality disorder. And it rewards those who mirror it because it's the media that is used to essentially dominate everybody. And they would prefer that you're a cringing, codependent sheep. But if they can convert you into one of them, another control freak narcissist, they happily will. And they will rely on you to be the mask Karens, the helmet Karens, whatever agenda it is, to hammer it in. So here's Sam Harris describing how Twitter had turned a lot of people into psychopaths.
After some years, that I was staring into a funhouse mirror where people were showing me their most grotesque faces. And I just knew there couldn't be that many psychopaths in the world. But I was seeing psychopath after psychopath in my Twitter feed, coming from the left, coming from the right, the most toxically dishonest behavior. It was just gaslighting and insanity. And I recognized that this was having an effect on me. I didn't want to see. I didn't want this false advertisement on an hourly basis to be getting into my head, where I was forming an image of humanity that I actually believe was inaccurate, right? But yet people were behaving terribly in ways that they never would behave in person, right? Because I knew it. The reason why I knew it for sure is that I had met some of these people in person, right? I had dinner with some of these people, and yet they're professionally behaving like psychopaths because of the incentives that Twitter was delivering to them. What we need.
Welcome to the internet, Sam Harris. I mean, what do you expect? This is the diffusion of responsibility. There's no accountability. But running, yeah. But he's correct, though. I mean, but he's one of them also. He's the guy who said, I don't care if Hunter Biden has dead children in his basement, I'm still voting for his dad or something. Like, I don't have any sympathy for him, but the point he's making is that, yeah, the internet is definitely there to turn people into enforcers. Okay, continuing. So many things have popped up in the last couple of days. You know, the whole God versus Gaia thing. We predict these things. It wasn't even a shock. But it's most likely nothing. But the other thing we've been talking about lately is the do angle, the whole do thing, and how direct energy weapons are mostly a science fiction construct. I mean, sure, you might find some description on some military page about it, but you cannot correlate that to Maui. But what's the whole point of this direct energy weapon predictive programming building up to that? For example, the Mountain Dew Maui Blast. There's something to it. Well, Miles Mathis put out a piece here on the Dew. I think it's called Dew for Brains or something like that. I'll post the article. But he said possibly the strangest side street to this fake is the Dew angle, which is being promoted in a chorus so raucous it can only come from Langley or the Air Force. But why and why now? Why is someone so insistent that you fear the dreaded Dew? He said, because they are losing the nuclear fear and need to replace it with something else. I think this is a very astute observation. They're losing their fear of, or your fear, you're losing it. They're losing their credibility with it. He says people are finally figuring out there are no nukes, and the Oppenheimer movie failed to quench that figuring. That too was a PR failure of massive proportions. But they need you to fear one of their weapons of mass destruction to keep you huddling under the bed. COVID failed because people figured that one out as well. The next fake demic is going to be met with stony silence, non-compliance, or violent pushback. So they need you afraid that they can wipe you out by the millions with some new weapon. All they have to do is push a button and they can melt your entire town off the map. Now, a lot of the doobies, the doobers, the do pushers, the direct energy weapon fear pornographers, what do we call them? They're all over this thing. They were all over the Twin Towers. Why? And by the way, it's like, let's say they did direct energy weapon the Twin Towers. How did they take down WTC 7? It's one of the points that he raises in this article. That one was pulled, but the others were zapped. Like, how does that make sense? But in this article, he breaks down so much of this stuff about the direct energy weapon, the history of its use before, and I agree with him that what happened there was just CGI, basic special effects. He even suggests a few things in there about the lack of burning shingles that maybe would indicate that they had to keep a safe work area for the media performing the psyop, which is actually what it is. After his jogging accident, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz shows himself with an eye patch. This was shared by Michael Letts. The significance here about this guy falling and poking his eye, wearing an eye patch. He was born on Trump's birthday. Just another example. So many examples of this, from that beaten up Trump effigy head in the White House conference room to all these cryptic references. 614, like the guy that was shot by Alec Baldwin, was born on a Trump's birthday, 614. What was that movie? Don't Look Up. Like the meteor is going to hit the Earth in 6 months and 14 days. Okay, I'm going through your comments. Lean Dion says the new Fed Nazi character supports Biden 2024. You know, one of those Fed Nazi characters making the news turns out to be this 33-year-old CIA connected, obvious plant, but he was stalking Laura Loomer. I don't trust any of these characters. In that Goyim Defense League, the ones who were hanging the flag over the freeway in Los Angeles and it said "Yay is right," those guys, they're not even real Nazis or racists. The guy's a failed, oh, he's a rapper. I'm not going to say failed rapper. He was rapping and then he became this Nazi leader. Well, I don't think that a rapper who builds his entire life around appropriating black culture is actually a racist. I think that he's an actor. I don't know if he believes any of what he says. I think these characters that you see paraded around WWE style are just, rent a Nazi, rent a mobs. You could probably find them on Cameo. Here's what I'm talking about. Kent R. Boneface McClellan, 33. He's been arrested before for burglary and assault, trafficking meth, arrested in 2012 by the FBI for domestic terrorism. I'm curious if these tattoos are real. He was the one that looks like an orc in all the videos. Like, where did this guy come from? But no, just a coincidence. He's 33. When are we going to just take my advice and quarantine the 33-year-olds? You know how many instigators and agitators would just not be able to wreck things? I mean, imagine a world without QAnon Shaman, or Code Monkey Z, or Dave Koresh, Timothy McVeigh, Charles Manson, all these troublemakers. Lean Dion says, terrible rapper. Yeah, I couldn't quite figure out how he went from being this clownish rapper with these. I mean, it was like almost comedy rap, but really just silly stuff. How did he go from that to being this, really harsh Nazi ready to go to Auschwitz and get himself arrested? It doesn't add up, if you ask me. None of it adds up. A couple of other things I want to point out. The big event over there at Burning Man was the burning of a phoenix that had been encased in this box. And for years, we've been talking about the symbolism here. You cannot separate the symbol of the black box monolith, the cube, from the phoenix, from Christ, or this is just like a set of symbols that are all attached to this same theme of death and resurrection. But it's very interesting here that they actually used a phoenix after we've already been associating the Burning Man as a way of representing the phoenix. Yep, lock up the 33-year-olds. We should start a campaign. Candace Owen, she wouldn't have burned down Ye's career. She was 33 when she brought out that White Lives Matter thing. Okay, so none of this was true with Burning Man. Virus on the loose, boils, vomiting, hemorrhaging, people locking themselves in their RVs, medics showing up in full suits, full PPE, people coughing up some really coagulated blood, outside agencies, 13 dead. No, none of this stuff that was reported by these very concerned TikTokers was true. But I hope they get their impressions. That's all it's out. They say clicks. It's no longer clicks. People are now all about impressions. Okay, phones are open. 505 349 0420. If you believe in dues, please call in. If you believe that President Biden can push a button and zap you and you're scared, let me know. Call. I want to talk about it. If you believe that 5G towers can ignite the sky and burn us, let's talk about that too. Because I think there may be something to it. I really think that Miles Mathis has assessed the situation properly. That this is some kind of replacement thing that they need you to believe in. I've been saying this for some time. Left needs or uses climate change, right uses the geoengineering. It's this bifurcated psyop where they have to have something that fills in that slot. Oh yeah, that's his name. The rapper we're talking about from Glowy Defense League. It's Doobie Da Wop. It's cringe even saying it. Hey, here's another piece to the puzzle about Barbie being the whore of Babylon. Margot Robbie was in a movie called Bombshell. This is so interconnected. Every role she's had is interconnected with the Babylon archetype. And that archetype connects with the advent of the bomb, the nuclear bomb. And so all of this does figure into everything that's going on the world stage today. Specifically with how in Maui they sprayed soil tackifier on all of the burned areas. And that creates a pink sticky residue. So Maui's pink now. Now what is the connection here? It all ties in to this story between, well, this introduction of the new goddess, this new whore of Babylon, which is what Barbie represents. But it represents this new age, and it coincides with the advent of the nuclear age. And of course, you cannot separate the bomb tests, Bikini Island, the bomb shell emerging from that, just being an expression to describe a woman in a bikini. Now, this all ties into her role in the movie Babylon and in Barbie itself. And Barbie Land is code for Babylon. And we have discussed this at length, but this is just another piece to the puzzle. Another one, too, is the movie, I think it's called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where she plays Sharon Tate, who is the victim in the Manson killings. Kind of a side note, but I had to point out the bombshell things. It still ties into Maui, which is, of course, the subject of the conversation with regard to the direct energy weapons. Like maybe in their script, because we're talking about newsbenders, and they're writing the news years in advance. They're planning these stories years in advance. Maybe they're looking at this and they're like, hey, look, in 2023, we're going to nuke Maui. Then they creep up on 2019, 2020, and they're like, look, a lot of these conspiracy theorists aren't going to believe nukes anymore. We have Oppenheimer coming out. Right after Oppenheimer, we're scheduling a nuke for Maui. Can't do it. Let's just do direct energy weapons and climate change. And if you think about it, climate change makes a lot more sense as a quote global unifier than nukes. So I think that we may be living, well, we are living through a very heavily scripted reality, but there are some areas where they have to make adjustments. And I think do is a replacement fear. That's why I would like to speak to anyone who's afraid of it, because I'd like to know their opinions on other things, if they realize. We have another edition of Everything Wrong with the Capitol Riots and 889 Angles. I don't know if you've seen it. Most of you here have seen Everything Wrong with the Capitol Riots in 21 minutes, but Woo's News did a follow-up where he examines it in 889 angles with synchronized videos, and he exposes how this is all just a staged riot. Nobody died, nobody cried. Totally an inside job. 1/6 was an inside job, and it was left and right. All the fall guys from January 6th, all these so-called political prisoners are patsies, willingly so. Joe Biggs, Joe Biggs is not a political prisoner. He's an actor and a sellout, if you think about it. But I have the link here for Everything Wrong with the Capitol Riots in 889 Angles. And I'll go ahead and put this link in the Discord and in the chat so you can check that out. We will be talking to him in the next couple of days. Lean Dion says Putin threatened the U.S. again with the tired nuke thing. It's getting old quick. Yeah, now it's like an annual thing. It's like it was last year that he was going to hit us with Satan 2. Last August, last September. But yeah, this is the update to the video. And by the way, they took down his YouTube channel. Woo's News is off of YouTube, so that's on BitChute now. I wonder what he said. But YouTube is not the be-all end-all. We really have to just break that conditioning. Most of us already have. They will never, treat anybody fair in this. Here's your blue pill politics of the day. Joe Biden, again, wandering around aimlessly. This is so strange to me. This guy's either senile or he's acting like he's senile. But here he is at a Medal of Honor ceremony, and he puts the ribbon on the guy, But just before the benediction, he just wanders out of the room. And I had this theory from the very beginning because I couldn't believe they were going to put this guy in front of us. I thought, well, maybe this is just a way for them to demonstrate for us like the death of what he represents. You know, you have this old white male dying in front of everybody, and it's like, let's just get rid of him and let Kamala take over. It just seems so scripted. Marjorie Taylor Greene says, I agree with this man. This is her actual account, and she has 2.6 million followers. She's agreeing with this man who is raging about, I believe he threatens to commit terrorism or something. Let me play a short clip.
Go get the clip. But if y'all motherfuckers think y'all bold, the government, whoever the fuck you are behind this, if you so motherfucking bold and you think you gonna make me take something, do it, bro. Try that shit. I so want y'all to try that shit. If I ain't never asked for anything in the world, if you really...
Now, my point in bringing this up is that MTG is sharing this man's commentary, saying, I agree with this man. The only reason she's doing this is pandering. This is the same thing they did after the mugshot came out. They're like, look, now Trump is popular with everybody on the streets. He's got street cred because he's got a mugshot. Now he's going to be kind of lauded by anybody who's ever been arrested. Like they have something in common with him. I mean, it's a very, I don't know what you want to call it. They're not in touch with reality. But she's trying to claim that she has something in common with people who have some kind of grievance against the government, and just throwing this out there.
really feel like we gonna get to the point, you really think you finna cause another pandemic and you think you gonna force me to do something? But try that shit. That's all I got to say. Everybody else, y'all could do all that bluff shit.
In other words, he gets a little more heated, and he's not making direct threats to anybody in particular, but just the fact that she would share this is just kind of notable. All right. Now, I was asked a question by the interviewer about the future. And he said, what do I think about the future? And I said, we're moving into an increased mediated world of pure subjectivity, and I think it's going to be very dystopian in a sense. I'm thinking like Brave New World. But here's a video by the World Economic Forum promoting transhumanism, where it talks about how we're reaching a point where our bodies are going to be so high-tech that we won't be able to distinguish between what is natural and what is artificial. And this is being described as, of course, progress.
The very idea of human being some sort of natural concept is really going to change.
Our bodies will be so high tech, we won't be able to really distinguish between what's natural and what's artificial.
Inside our own heads is the most complex arrangement of matter in the known universe.
You might ask yourself, can we get to be superhumans?
Welcome to the fourth industrial revolution, where wearing an Oculus is considered, progress and evolution. It's kind of disappointing. But there's going to be a point, I guess, eventually, when you'll be able to upload your consciousness into X. Tom Brady doing damage control. Jake the A-hole has been calling out the scripted nature of professional sports. Now they seem to be countering it with this parody, pretending that they're scripted to hide the fact that they are. Check this out. This is Tom Brady reading a script.
Do I think the NFL's scripted? You think I really would have played along with the script that had me losing to Peyton's little brother Eli twice in the Super Bowl?
There you have it, mocking it. Do you really think I would follow this script? And there's a lot of videos like this. a number of these videos are coming out just saying, and I think it's a blowback. I think they're trying to deal with people calling it scripted by flooding it. So now if you search is NFL scripted, you find all these little comedic clips. All right, yes, commenter here, Infinite Mute says Russian boogeyman nuke threats been part of the script for decades. It's lost its fear factor. And I don't think Oppenheimer brought the fear back. And I watched Oppenheimer, and I don't know if the nuke thing was all that impactful if you're not in the theater, or if you weren't raised with the fear, hiding under desks. Like I didn't really think it was all that impressive, to be honest. But they put it out there for purely propaganda reasons. Now listen to this. The defending NFC champs head to New England to open the season. Sunday, September the 10th, Eagles versus Patriots. Speaking of scripted sports, you'll note the numbers here, 11-9. So you have a 9-11, Eagles versus Patriots. I would interpret this as MAGA versus Feds. That's what I'm guessing. But anyway, it's there. And nearly every major psychological operation is predicted in not just the entertainment, movies and video games and everything else, books, but sports. Sports are a vehicle for predictive programming as everything else is. Peace Circle 360 says NFL on heavy damage control. Jake the A-hole says yes, they turned the NFL's scripted narrative into a joke to cover up the fake football. I'm going to make some money on the upcoming rigged games. Yeah, interesting. You know what? I think you might be onto something. I used to follow Zach Hubbard for some time, as he has broken down a lot of the scripting and obvious numerology and stuff encoded into the football games that suggest that it's scripted. It has to be. And he has made money off of bets. Lord Laney says this is their new tactic, obfuscating your searches by flooding the media sites with keywords that relate to the search. We've experienced this. When Mad Mike Hughes began the production of his documentary called Rocket Man, all of a sudden, Elton John has a documentary being made about him called Rocket Man. So it went from searching for Rocket Man, leading you to Mike's documentary, to Elton John. It's like a sick joke. And then on the anniversary of Mike's crash date, Elton John nearly has a crash, and it's on the news that witnesses were horrified. Elton John almost crashed. Rocket Man almost died. I'm like, that's not a coincidence. They bury anything, and they flood the zone all the time. It works. Jake the A-hole says Zach is an after-the-fact shill, losing support by the day. Okay. Well, I haven't really followed, or I haven't bet on anything that he said, but I haven't really kept up with much of it. But he's not an auto hoaxer, and I don't hold that against people. Like, if you're a believer in the red pill nightmare verse, I don't hold it against you, but you're no different than someone who's woke. Do you consider yourself woke or red pill? Like, those are two areas where your heart's in the right place, but you just took an alternative set of narratives to replace what is obviously fake. Yeah, that's obviously fake. And they know some people are going to be smart enough to see it's obviously fake. And for those people, they have these other fake narratives. The red versus blue is a false dialectic. Red pill versus blue pill is also a false dialectic. Jake says Zach doesn't bet on games, he just charges $5 for his riddles. I'll have to check again and see where it's at, but the last time I assessed, mostly what I got out of his channel was pretty good pattern recognition and the narratives in the games pertaining to the players, their names. Like we saw this with Damar Hamlin. Everybody's kneeling except for the guy named Neil, who has the 33 on his back, among other things. But anybody who doesn't call out the fake shootings is fake, the fake terror attacks is fake, they are part of the mainstream media. And I can substantiate this. For example, Alex Jones, he's mainstream media. Why would you consider him alternative? He operates in their fictional universe. If you're not calling out the stagecraft, the fakery, the psychological operations, the perception management, the CGI, if you're believing in the alternative line, whether it be direct energy weapons or second shooters, then you're mainstream media. I consider what we do entirely separate. It is entirely separate. This off world stage perspective doesn't entertain or filter our assessment of the facts through their lies. We don't have to include them. Like, I don't believe in direct energy weapons that melt towns, so that's not part of my assessment. But people will believe whatever the media isn't saying. Like, it's contrarian in a way. It's very knee jerk. Another thing about Zach Hubbard, though, I think he's pretty consistent in blaming Jesuits for everything and tying everything to Jesuits, which I don't know if that makes any sense. I mean, there is such a thing, but the idea that there's this one group that we figured out is kind of a staple of limited hangout operations and misdirecting conspiracy theorists. Because as long as you're chasing the ones who did the bad things, you're not questioning if the bad things are even bad things. If it's a psyop, if nobody died, nobody cried, then what does that make of your scapegoat story? Are you really catching the culprit? No, the culprit's the media, not the guy in the alternative narrative to the mainstream media. And I'm surprised people still, well, I'm not surprised. The majority of people that reject the mainstream news fall for these traps all the time. And it's getting worse. It's getting increasingly difficult to find a cohesive structure into which all these puzzle pieces that don't fit the mainstream can be placed. All right, continuing. Jigsaw says, didn't Alex Jones call out Sandy Hook? No. No, Alex Jones says it's real. And what's worse, Alex Jones will distract you from the forest by having you look at one tree. So he talks about Sandy Hook for years. He didn't talk about dozens or hundreds of others. He assumed Parkland was real. He assumed Vegas was real. What Alex Jones has done and will continue to do is he proffers the false, or rather a misleading way of looking at the news. He's like, hey, it's either real or it's a false flag. Real or false flag. In other words, real or real. But the other real is an alternative narrative. But nowhere in his assessment is there even the remote possibility that it might just be fake. He's not allowed to go there. He's not allowed to even go there. He is controlled. There's no other way to explain it. Or he's just really ignorant, which doesn't make any sense. So like he's either really dumb, ignorant, whatever, or he's controlled. In which case, why would you trust it? But the main thing is this. He wants to filter you into seeing news as fake or false flag, fake or false flag. So you never unplug from the emotional, visceral reaction of seeing an atrocity. He's actually a terrorist. Alex Jones is a terrorist. Anybody who is insisting that these things are real, whether it's mainstream or alternative, are terrorists. They're feeding you Mentanol, fake red pills. And the red pill manufacturer is actually the same pharmaceutical company. Same pharmaceutical company makes your blue pills. They just realized the people who don't react to these properly need something a little stronger. And it is a stronger delusion. If you examine the blue pill worldview, contrast it with red, they're both equally delusional, but the red is deeper into a nightmarish version, or the woke. And these are parallel systems. It's the political horseshoe theory. It's true that the opposite sides of the spectrum do bend around and eventually resemble each other without ever touching. It is true. They designed it that way on purpose. Angst G says Miles Mathis is also calling nuclear energy as fake, as citing the lifespan of power plants as way past their viability dates. Wouldn't surprise me. My general rule here, sort of an axiom, is fake until proven real. If faking it is something that would have some obvious political utility, like there's usually a reason for it. All right, continuing. Russian state TV threatens nuclear strike on U.S., and Tim Pool says you are not prepared. Tim Pool believes in this stuff. How can he sleep at night? I couldn't sleep at night if I believed in all this stuff. It would actually probably bother me. But again, if you recognize that the existence of the nuclear bomb, the nuclear age, it empowered the elite, where now everyone's convinced that they can blow us all up at the push of a button. That makes them terrorists. They're using psychological terror, but they're using terrorism. So what does it mean when somebody who isn't in the power elite, somebody like a Tim Pool, says, oh, by the way, guys, you're not ready, you might get nuked? Is he any less of a terrorist? This is what I mean when I say Alex Jones is a terrorist. Or Matt Walsh, the blogger who's always talking about these leftist progressive shooters going after Christians. Like, you have all these individuals who are giving you these stories meant to intimidate you and control you, to get you to go into one of their boxes. And I'm just saying that Tim Pool is spreading this notion that, yes, you're pretty close to death right now. Think about that. You might just be incinerated in your sleep by direct energy weapons. All right. Compare these pictures. I mentioned the Glowy Defense League, and someone juxtaposed it with that meme of those feds who all had the matching shades, matching haircuts, and he has the exact same shades and haircut as these feds. Just something interesting to note. In fact, what really got me looking closer at school shootings and mass shootings was how all of the shooters looked the same. And that really began my fixation on bowl cuts. And now thinking back, I'm like, well, they used to have you duck and cover under the desks because of the mushroom cloud. Now they duck and cover under the desks because of the bowl cut shooter. And these are analogous mind control systems, trauma-induced mind control. But I think there might be something in this repeated symbolism if you compare the mushroom cloud to the mushroom haircut of the average mass shooter. All right, continuing through my Twitter feed. So many people here are I'm not sure what you want to call it. They're gloating at this. So Isaac's Army, this is a QAnon guy with 106,000 followers. He says, it looks like God is not done. He's not down with the hedonism at Burning Man. So apparently the people at Burning Man, since they're practicing hedonism, which means they're trying to have fun, they're getting punished by God. And here you can see a dust storm. Again, gloating over the suffering of their enemies. Someone pointed this out. Was that another COM, the behemoth financial institution of BlackRock? And I pointed this out before, but it's worth repeating. Burning Man happens at BlackRock. There were 33 contiguous or consistent Burning Man festivals, but before it was interrupted. And at that time, I was pointing it out. Black Rock City seemed to correlate with BlackRock, which suddenly became a name that we were hearing in the news once the market crash happened on 3/16/2020. Jake the A-hole says, Tim, I've been to Burning Man in 2016. I can tell you firsthand experience of what it's like. Yeah, if you want to call in, it's 505-349-0420. I mean, I assume it's just Bohemian Grove for leftists. Just another festival. I mean, we have a Burning Man festival thing here, but there are some videos I've seen that have detailed what happens at the VIP level, and I think it's mostly a bunch of hype. Like you have these TikTokers, like, yeah, I'm going to be there. I think a lot of people are going expecting that they're going to meet some people, some social media influencers who are more or less just there for the selfies. Ollie Goering says, if next year Tim Beller didn't pull through with proof and interviews of mole children saved from deep underground military bases and tunnels, I will be upset. Yeah, I thought Tim Bellard would be hot on the case with the missing Maui children, who some believe were put into tunnels and were then trafficked and harvested, and their adrenochrome was given to Hillary Clinton. And this theory that adrenochrome is just really good for your skin and it helps reverse your aging, it's like, yeah, show me. Show me one of these Democrats that doesn't look like they're, you know, aging appropriately. Hillary Clinton is not a beneficiary of any kind of vampirism. All right, the Burning Man chaos began exactly 666 days after Astro World. You can look here. November 5th, 2021 to September 2nd, 2023. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, Tim, it's Jake the A-hole with firsthand experience of Burning Man.
Okay, Burning Man, from your perspective, is it anything like a drug-fueled hipster doofusville, or is it a little more artsy? How'd you take it?
It's got actually a lot more art and regular folks trying to just have a good time. So you have to realize out of 70,000 people, there's going to be some regular old good people just wanting to have fun and dress up and do a little bit of mushrooms or acid while they do it. And so a lot of people there do have a good attitude and they're into it. They just want to dress up and party and have a good time. And they're not even really regular hippies. A lot of these people have a regular job all year round, but then they just go do this little dress up, thing out in the desert. So it's a little bit trendy in a way, actually. And I've been to the real deal hippie thing, like, out in front of a Fish show or a Grateful Dead show in the parking lot. So I know what real hippie stuff looks like. And this is more like weekend warrior, people who have good jobs in big cities across the United States who will spend thousands to rent an RV and thousands on supplies, thousands on decorations for a camp and this, that, and the other. So
is it not
it's
then?
A lot
So
more it's a lot more commercial in a way than you think.
Okay. Okay. See, that's interesting because it seems like there's a trend right now to hate on it. And from the right, they think it's just a big orgy in the desert with like big burning idols. Like they have this concept of it, and I don't think it matches reality at all. So you didn't get any of that impression that it was a big desert orgy and hedonism.
Here's the lowdown on that. So there are people walking around naked. Usually it's guys and people you don't want to see naked. There are girls with their boobs out, but that doesn't mean you're allowed to walk up and just start fondling them or doing stuff. No, that's like you find out right away that like just because somebody's naked or whatever, like it stops being a big deal after the first day, because then it's like, yeah, I saw like 28 fucking ugly naked old guys, and then like a couple girls with their boobs out, and then by the second or third day you stop caring, stops being a big deal. But nobody's out in public doing any sexual anything, not that I saw while I was there, not at all. In fact, they have an orgy dome, and when I went there, I actually was able to talk a girl in going in to check it out. You have to go through an orientation before they even let you into the orgy dome. And they want to know, like, why you're in there, what you're going to expect to see. Here's a bucket of free condoms and lube and stuff. So if you are planning on doing something, they have an orgy dome, but you have to go through an orientation to get in there and find a girl willing to do something. And believe it or not, all the girls there are not all looking to do stuff with you like you might think. So if you don't go with somebody to hook up with, don't think that all the girls are going to be like just waiting for you or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of that's like girls want to dress up, and if they want their boobs out, it's because they want to walk around with their boobs out. It's not because they want you to walk up and touch them or do anything.
Sure.
I didn't see not one single sexual act.
It is not unmitigated
act of sex.
It's not unmitigated, unadulterated hedonism like these Republicans imagine.
Not like you would think.
No.
So it does go on, but it's not just like, oh my God, everyone's out in public just screwing away. No, not at all.
No, if you want that, you got to go to the Bohemian Grove, from what I hear. But
so I was actually a bit disappointed because in 2016 I was like not fully awake to everything I am now. So I went there expecting one thing and then finding out another. So I won't go back because it just wasn't that fun. But yeah, I was thinking it was more of like a straight up, orgy druggy thing, and like, no, it's not really.
So would you say that the marketing is maybe part of what got you there? The marketing that this is a place where there's this, just paradise for people who are looking for that. Do you think that maybe that was a marketing strategy?
Yeah, I guess it used to be more like that originally. So I guess like the very first bunch of Burning Mans were like a lot more wild, but then it tamed out over the years. And now it's like you have to spend thousands of dollars. It's not just the ticket. It's like to get there, all your supplies. You have to have a camp and lights and a bike and a bunch of people to do that with, and it's more of like an event where people are going to kind of party and let loose for like a week, and then they go back to their regular jobs.
Yeah, I see that. That's
like
so it's more conventional.
Of normies playing dress up,
Well, look, I like the kinetic sculptures. I like the art for sure, and I don't have any interest. I don't take any pleasure out of the fact that those people were potentially suffering. But it was interesting to note how many people were actually hoping it was so, and blaming them for it. I'm like, why are so many people hating on the burners all of a sudden? So I'm glad you could call.
No, if you look at actual videos, you can find them. If you look at the like upload date. So like most recent upload date for Burning Man, and then sift through and cut out the mainstream media crap. You can find people who are there who stayed up till Monday when they actually burned the man on Monday. So people usually don't leave until Sunday or Monday anyway. So the fact that on Saturday there's news reports like people are trapped and they can't leave. Yeah, they locked the gates because it was all muddy, but people don't usually leave Saturday anyway. People leave. Like they start leaving maybe Sunday, and then a bunch of people leave Monday because that's when it's officially over. So the reports about like that they're all trapped in there is like not accurate, because if you're not planning to leave until Monday and on Saturday it rains,
imagine being a burner.
Chill out until Monday.
Like,
anyway,
imagine returning back to civilization, and you go on Twitter and you find out while you were out there in the desert having fun under the stars in the mud or whatever, people were cheering for your downfall, or hypothetically concerned that you were suffering from boils and disease X.
If you look at the videos, there's people dancing in the mud and making the best of it. So they go out there to party and hang out in the dirt. So it's dirty. Nobody's got a proper shower, and they expect to be dirty and nasty and hang out, for a week in the desert in the hot sun
it's
and
Mad
stuff.
Max.
So they enjoyed the rain while it was coming down, and then afterwards people walked around in the mud. And then for anybody who tried to leave right away and drive out with an RV or a car who maybe got stuck, for them it might have sucked, but like anybody who just chilled out and just waited it, and then just partied anyway, I don't see how like how they would have had any sort of horrible time. So basically,
now
yeah, I've been there and I know how it goes if it doesn't rain.
2016, right? So 2016.
Go ahead.
You said 2016ish. You weren't quite quote awake yet, so you were just going to this thing as a normie going to a festival. When did you start really becoming savvy to all the media hoaxery and the satanic world order, etc.?
Well, I was partially awake. So I had just started the Flat Earth Asshole channel in January, but I wasn't awake to every single thing on the news being fake to the level that it is, and I don't know. I guess I was still kind of, I guess because I started waking up in 2014 with 9/11 stuff, and then 2015 I started seeing Flat Earth content. So 2016 I started making it, but I wasn't like breaking down fake shootings on like a weekly basis at the time. You see what I'm saying?
Well, you're still pretty cutting edge though, because you have a lot of people who are like, yeah, NASA's fake, shootings are fake, but football is real. So that's another level to transgress against the consensus, trying to desperately hold on to something, and that's a sacred cow, going after the sports like you have been. What do you take of all these, like Tom Brady and others, making jokes about the idea that they're scripted? Do you feel like it's damage control because of you?
Pretty much. I mean, the argument online escalated so much last year that they had to like get cronies to say that it's not rigged, that it's just the refs making bad calls. And then when that didn't work, then they had to go with, oh, well, let's make fun of it being scripted by asking the players what sort of thing do they hope in next year's script. Because that makes it not fake, I guess, right?
I see.
Making fun of how scripted it is. So, you know what I mean? So I see the damage control they're attempting to do, but, like, they're still going to be faking the games. Like, there's so much money being bet already on this first NFL game that I can tell there's going to be shenanigans right out of the gate, first game, and I'm going to be there to point it out. So
okay, so you're suggesting
to what level they try and stop me, I don't know.
People think when we say scripted, they'll think like bad calls or they're trying to coerce a game in a certain way.
No.
But there's levels of scripting. No. It's way beyond that you get into, which has to do with even tricks using magnetics, etc.
So the players are all in on it, and the NFL can go as far as to, have guys wear magnetic gloves on certain plays to assist in a catch of the ball. So if you want a receiver to look like a superstar and make a one-handed catch, one of the ways you can ensure that it happens is to assist him with some magnetic technology. And there is a such thing as a magnetic glove and magnetics inside the ball, and it can assist somebody in a one-handed catch so much so that a regular person like you or me could look like a superstar if we had those gloves and one of those balls. Same as if you wanted to make sure a guy makes a shot in basketball, if you want to control for sure who makes it and who doesn't, whether the ball goes in or not, and you had an unlimited budget, why wouldn't you rig the ball and the rim to ensure that you have the power to control that game? So, of course, with technology advances and an unlimited budget in a sports league, they're going to make sure that the balls, the equipment are rigged accordingly. Just like, a magic show, a magician oftentimes will use, like, let's say, a deck of cards that's been doctored, but it might look like a deck of
loaded
cards.
dice. Loaded dice, right.
And so what we're seeing, what we're going to see this season is, a bunch of technology inside the ball and manipulation of the ball, not just with the gloves and stuff, but also the kicks. So if you're going to have a field goal, you can control it in midair and make sure it misses or doesn't miss. And so there was an uptick about 10 years ago in the amount of balls hitting the uprights. And so that's when it really occurred to me that, like, okay, why are guys hitting the uprights now multiple times a week when it used to be like something that happened maybe once in an entire season? A guy would hit the uprights with a kick. So
Fascinating.
the uptick in balls smacking into the uprights on field goal kicks became overwhelming to where I came up with a phrase, return of the doink. And so that's like popular on my channel. So I've created phrases that have become popular with the scripted football
Is there
fans.
any return
And
of the
so,
doink merchandise? I like that. Return of the doink.
So I actually started to make some NFL is Need to merchandise and got rejected by a few different shirt companies that won't let me use the term or NFL. So they just won't let me say the NFL. I thought I could get away with saying the NFL was rigged on a shirt, but a Teespring wouldn't let it go down, and T-Chip. See, I tried it with a few different companies, and perhaps one might let it slide, but they're pretty quick to deny the use of that. So I want to sell some sort of merchandise to go along with it this year, but I also don't want to end up with any sort of legal trouble.
Yeah, it's wild. That's control.
You know.
That's meme control right there for you. And sure, it's legal and everything, but it shows you that if they need to flex their power to control how they're represented to make sure that no one has any kind of way to figure this out, yeah, they can certainly prevent that. And meme control is so big in this thing. But definitely appreciate you calling in and giving us a clue about Burning Man because, of course, the public overreacts to all of that. And one more thing, the direct energy weapons. What is your take on that whole push for the do thing as well?
It just seems like there's an overabundance of do information. And so I felt like it was being handed to us like, oh, well, if you don't buy the wildfire story, then you have to take the do narrative. And everyone was really quick to jump on board with just direct energy weapon. And I was like, well, isn't there other ways to burn up cars? And then the Hawaii real estate guy, like, just really rubbed me the wrong way with the inspection of the 2 cars in the random neighborhood that was untouched. And it got me thinking of, like, there's other ways to, like, burn stuff. Like, if you start a small fire and then evacuate most of the people, you could take just a team of guys with flamethrowers, just like really good flamethrowers, and just, oh, is this house on the list? Yes. Okay, is this house on the list? Oh, no, not this one. Okay. Is this next one on the list? Yes. You know, so I feel like you could systematically send guys with good flamethrowers or flamethrowing drones and just knock down buildings. But I was met with a lot of people saying, I'm covering for mass genocide. I'm a shill for even trying to suggest that there's no direct energy weapons. So a lot of people fell for that direct energy weapon narrative, and I feel like there's just other ways to burn up stuff. And I feel like we're being manipulated with what we see on the screen.
Yeah, good point. Good point. It was like low-hanging fruit. Everybody went to it like it was the default. And when I saw that coming, it's like, okay, so this is one of these things where I need more information. And so a lot of people ran with it. And anytime I see these rushes to judgment, whether it's the official view or alternative view, I find it suspect. And I look for whoever's shilling for big do. Or whatever it is the day.
So I just would like to see a direct energy weapon do something to a car in a video. Even if it is a video, no one's got that. So we're seeing a car burnt and being said this must be the aftermath of a do. And so I can find videos of cars being burnt up with like thermite, and then the aftermath looks pretty similar to what someone might say is a car burnt up by a do. But I don't have video of a car being burnt by a do. You know what I mean? There's no video of someone in a car being incinerated, burnt to a crisp by a do weapon, or you know what I mean? Or
and the Mountain Dew Maui Blast, I'm like, okay, there's predictive programming for this. There's things to lead truthers to conclude it, and predictive programming exists, but it doesn't mean what's coming is real. It just means it's coming. And that to me also kind of solidified the idea that this is definitely the alternative view they want you to have. It's manipulation.
So I suggested thermite is like a easy way to burn up these cars and then like melt some aluminum parts and whatever into a puddle even and melt through even like the hood of the car or whatever, and then you can point to it and be like, oh my god, this has to be a direct energy weapon. There's no other way. And so people in my own chat were like, Jake, what do you say? It has to be a direct energy weapon. And then when I showed the thermite, well, then it was like the people who had already made their mind up about dew, then they want to fight me on it. Well, so you're saying they sprayed thermite over the entire island of Hawaii? It's like, no. I'm just showing another way to burn up some cars.
Typical, though. When they are convinced of something emotionally, then they fight you emotionally. That's one of the things I've observed. They will defend their wrong belief with the same emotional intensity that they experienced when they attached themselves to it. To me, that's MK Ultra.
And then when I suggested in my stream that they're planting this missing children narrative, and then people were like, in my own chat, were like, yeah, but there are. Even a few of my mods were like, dude, there are missing. There's reports of thousands. Like, guys, what? Name one missing child that you know, let alone thousands. Like, you're getting this report from the same people on TV. And like, what? How many parents have we seen screaming bloody murder that their child went missing in the fire? You know what I mean? How is it that the children go missing here, but there aren't thousands of parents to like tell us the story? So.
Right, and you'll notice too that the only people
I was upset to see even people in my own comments, like people like associated with my channel watching me, are like, dude, there were thousands of missing kids. Are you saying there's no missing kids, Jake?
I got that too, and I was like,
it's becoming harder and harder.
Look, the missing kids thing though, I'm like, wait a minute here. What is it with this missing kid thing where the political left is like, no, climate change did it, and they're not talking about missing kids. And the right wing and the conspiracy theorists are saying the missing kids. But then when it comes to school shootings, the right says, oh, there's no dead kids. So it's just, to me, it's too partisan. And they each have their own, quote, missing kids, my dead children. And neither of them have real dead children that they're pining over. It's just propaganda. It meant to target your heartstrings.
And so between the dead kids narrative that I haven't seen proven in any way, or the do attack I haven't seen proven in any way, yeah, like, I don't know, there's only like a couple channels even that I can think of, me, you, I don't know, hardly anyone who's stepped up and said that that it's not a do attack, that doesn't seem like that's the cause, that there's some other fakery and shenanigans going on. It doesn't have to be just a wildfire or a dew. And it seems like those are the only two options we've been given. Like, zero third choices.
Yeah.
So I had to like just invent a third choice with thermite, just so that there is an extra option, you know?
Exactly. The thing is, we're looking at a closed set. And it's just movie props, special effects. There's any number of ways they could do it. CGI, thermite, like you say. But the last thing we need to do is run to the science fiction explanation that hides the role of media in the fakery, that hides the role of the people on the ground and actors, etc. They're fabricating and simulating these big events. But if you're able to scapegoat a weapon, a sci-fi weapon like that, now it's just regular people being attacked. So it just totally reframes it, and I reject that frame.
It makes total sense. Like, if you're a normie, you don't believe in dews, but you believe in nukes. And if you're a conspiracy theorist, you don't believe in nukes, but you believe in dews.
Ooh, that's good. That's
See
exactly
what I'm saying?
it.
So they have the world-ending weapon either way, right? So if you tell a conspiracy theorist that they're going to nuke your house tonight, they'll laugh at you. But then if you say, oh, they might like nuke you or hit you with a dew weapon in your car, they'll be like, well, that actually could happen.
Fascinating, right?
Right?
Yeah. It's definitely like a trap.
Tell a normie that they're going to be hit with a dew weapon, and they'll think that that's stupid. Isn't it hilarious? So the normies don't believe in that Hawaii was hit with a dew, but the conspiracy theorists do. But the normies also think that there's, that Putin can shoot a nuke. Whereas conspiracy theorists pretty much across the board don't believe in nukes. So they've got you believing in the world-ending weapon either way. So
yeah, it's quite a trap. Quite a trap.
Those channels like Hawaii Real Estate that went out of their way to push it and got so many views. I checked in a day or so ago, and it was like apparently he got fired now from his job, and I feel like it's all very convenient how like this guy shows up and he's a real estate agent in Hawaii. He's got a website for you to donate to, and he's going to make sure the money gets to the right people. And he's going to suggest through the titles of his videos that it's a dew attack while showing us burnt up cars in the middle of an untouched neighborhood. And then the cops start harassing him while he's looking at a car during one of his live streams. And then now he says he's been fired. And so there's this outcry of, all the support like, oh, it was because you revealed the truth that they're doing this to you. So everyone's just assuming that this guy's such a hero doing the right thing.
I bet he's got to give, send, go.
It makes perfect sense.
He's got to have they're going to say, oh, he lost his job. Absolutely. They'll raise money for him, etc. Definitely typical. This is like template.
Yeah, and they make it out like this is what'll happen to you also. If you open your mouth, then, you can lose your job and have issues with the cops and blah, blah. So it's almost like they have these gatekeepers set up here to like, oh, well, if you don't want to give your money to these organizations that The Rock and Oprah are suggesting, then we got Hawaii Real Estate who claims he's going to get the money to the real victims. But he's another guy pushing missing children and thousands of dead children. So there's like 3 different channels that have the same thing, like some sort of real estate background or like Hawaii background beforehand, that now became de facto like dew pushers, getting tons of views by YouTube and the algorithm stroke to go with it.
Yeah, I can't take anyone's assessment seriously if they're going to act like this thing is organic and real, considering the connection between the Vegas mass casualty psyop simulation event. There's just no way you have the same key player involved, the chief of police from Maui, at both events, and one is obviously a hoax, the other's like legit in some way. No way. And this is just another example, though, of how the whole trutherism, the truther community, is corralled like a bunch of sheeple into prefabricated explanations that keep them in the cult of fear. And yeah, they fear the dew, and I just don't.
So he visited, that Hawaii real estate guy visited a car on the beach. He visited those 2 cars in a neighborhood, but then there was one like near a beach that was just on the side of the road, and it was just by itself. And they popped the hood open, and they show how the engine's all like melted and been turned to powder. And it's like, oh, it melted the engine inside and turned it to powder, but the hood just happened to pop open and work just perfectly, and you just knew to go try and pop the hood open. So it's just like I started to spot little things that like weren't making sense, and then it was like he would say things like this breaks science, this just defies science. So if you repeat that, it's like you don't think it's a wildfire. Now they got you thinking, oh, well, this defies science, this breaks science. They got you just repeating nonsense without taking into consideration that it's a prop car. So he never says, oh, I think they might have set this car up right here, maybe burnt it with other means and to try to lead us to the dew conclusion. No, he just leads us to the dew conclusion and says, like, this breaks science. This goes against everything that science has ever taught us. Really pushing that narrative so that if you're on the other end watching it, one of the hundreds of thousands of people seeing it, you're going to repeat that. So you're going to say shit like, oh, Oprah's house didn't burn because she painted her house blue. And this just breaks the laws of science, what's going on. They want you to repeat the stupidest shit, I think.
It's just, it's persuasive language, and they're using all of the tactics of marketing in how they sell us on these ideas. And it's great to be able to call it out and see it. real time like we have been, because it's spellbinding. And I'm not falling for any of this stuff these days. To me, it's fake until proven real. And even when they say, "How dare you not believe? What about the dead children?" I always retort with, "Fake dead children don't matter. Fake dead children's lives don't matter." And that usually gets them mad, but it's true. Fake dead kids' lives truly do not matter. But apparently they do to people who believe in fake things, like do.
So this story will eventually go, die down, and less people will watch those channels, and I figure they'll just fade away. But it's like they weren't talking about any other truth beforehand. So it's like a guy running a real estate channel in Hawaii, he's well off, becomes a truther by default when his island gets shot with a laser. That's what it takes to make him become a truther. And everyone treats him like he's some legit hero. Like, well, how come he wasn't breaking down fake shootings or anything? Like, he never talked about any other truth. So your island has to be shot with a laser for you to, like, suddenly become a hero. I don't know.
I see what you mean. There's no way. That doesn't make any sense. You don't suddenly become active over something that you don't even understand fully, but you're like, yeah, this is my groove. I found this. I'm going to become the do expert online, lose my career and job, and I will crusade for the
Yeah,
missing. Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
yeah. Three videos and 2 live streams a day, pushing a place for people to donate, tugging on their heartstrings with my dead kids. But yeah, I had people even in my own comment section be like, "He seems totally legit to me. You're attacking the wrong people." Blah blah blah. I'm just saying they aren't going to use just Oprah and The Rock to try and get donations out of us. They're going to try and use regular folks too. They're going to have several different donation sites to try and send you to. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I figure all
abs-
the donations are for what they're going to rebuild there when it's all said and done. And so there's lots of rumors going into that too. It's for Oprah's new mansion and shit like that. So they've got the rumor mill working perfect for anybody who doesn't believe the wildfire narrative to spout off the stupidest shit.
well, the
And people, going into football season won't be talking about it much longer anyway. So I expect that one to fall off the radar pretty quick.
Yep, exactly. And I'm just, as a rule, anytime somebody leads with, "If you don't believe me, you're hurting the children or you're not caring about the children," I'm just gonna kind of look a little closer at it, because throwing the children up there is a tactic of the left, and now the right and the conspiracy theory circles are embracing it. All this thing about the missing children, the dead children that they don't really care about, like Sound of Freedom. What about those children? What about the tunnel children? Now it's the Maui children. Well, now the tunnel children have to wait. Like, no, they don't really care. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the next new shiny thing that would, distract them from their cause so easily.
So that was pretty much my thoughts on that. I'll go ahead and jump off here and let you get back to your stream, and
Awesome. Well, thank you for
I'll be
calling. Yeah, thank you for calling as always.
watching from the sideline.
All right, well, have a great evening. Thank you
All
again.
right, talk to you later.
All right, everyone, that is Jake the A-hole. And I think if I might have a link to his channel, I probably should do this more often. I just assume everybody here is subscribed to him. But if you're not, Jake the Asshole is the name of the channel, and he does all kinds of work, kind of along the lines of what we do. But he specifically has gone into an area that I have really no knowledge of, which is, I mean, I have watched a few videos, but I haven't done a deep dive into the rigging of sports. But here is his latest. In my latest video, I have a fantastic audio clip from a former NFL player and Super Bowl champion Dwight Smith, who says, quote, "The NFL is entertainment and the outcomes are not decided on the field," thus basically admitting the NFL is rigged. Check out this clip on my channel. So I'll put a link in the description below. Again, this is the caller's channel, and if you know anybody who's spellbound by the NFL, it's just as bad as just as fake as everything else. Maybe you don't want to spoil it. If you remember growing up, you told somebody wrestling was fake, they got kind of mad. It's going to be the same thing all over again. We have some commenters in Odyssey, Last Watch says, in my opinion, the 2,000 kids will turn out to be a red herring to discredit truthers. If true, where are the parents and relatives? Why are they not freaking out publicly? He also says, red and blue to become Phoenician, Venetian royal purple. If you divide purple, you get red and blue. And he says, Dim Tool is a Freemason. Wake up. And now a multimillionaire. And you say Dim Pool, I assume you mean Tim Pool. Oh yeah, he's an operative. He has been since Occupy Wall Street. I just find them useful to observe, to understand where the worldview warfare is taking the different factions. Anyway, I want to say thanks everyone for the comments, and as always to the callers, we appreciate it. And this will be sent out in the newsletter right after. This is Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworms Auto Hoaxer GTFO. We'll start earlier tomorrow and we will have more time, but I have to get back to packaging and shipping. Books are going out, art is going out, and things are moving along swimmingly here at the IPS Raft.